Okay, this whole month we've been talking about how something has shifted in how people show up and buy online. And it's not been extremely dramatic, although I will say for a couple of people this has been quite dramatic. But this definitely did not happen overnight. There have been a lot of people making these shifts. And I kind of also want to say that everything is cyclical. So patterns come back, cycles come back in terms of how people buy, what content works well, what doesn't work well. You see this a lot in, for example, at one point everyone's like, everything needs to look super professional and highly styled. And then 6 months later, it's like, no, everything needs to be amateur content. And like, you have to have a dirty smear over your camera lens. So like, don't take anything I say too literally and always check in with yourself and your audience and your market. But if you've been selling the same way you were selling 2 years ago and it has stopped working, or you're wondering why everything feels a bit harder, this is the episode you need. Hello, and welcome to Fail to Win, the show where we love to make mistakes and learn from them so you can turn your passion into profits and live life on your own terms. I'm Amy van der Putten from FastForwardAmy, your host and coach, and I'll bring you a new episode with simple strategies every Tuesday. Yes, the rules of the online game have changed. The buyer has not disappeared, they've not ran out of money, but the buyer has changed and their behavior has too. And entrepreneurs who understand that sooner rather than later are going to be able to restructure their entire offer stack on time without going into panic mode. I will add that. So if your high ticket program is currently harder to fill out than it used to be, you're not really sure if it's your messaging, your audience size, or just the market, there's a really good chance that it's actually your entry point or the lack of one. Because as I was recording these episodes, I just got a sale in from someone who bought my 2K program, who used to be in one of my programs years ago and who has been in my audience for a really long time. And what has really stuck out to me during my last launch is how many repeat buyers I've had, but at the same time, how difficult it is to convince new people who have never bought anything. And what I've been seeing is that there is a massive connection between people who bought, let's say, a low ticket product a week, 2 weeks ago, who then buy my bigger program, but people who have never bought anything before who then buy a 2K program, less. That happens a lot less. So what happens here is that most entrepreneurs build their business with one product in the window, and it's often the most expensive thing they sell. And this is what a lot of people, including myself, have been preaching, right? Take one product, grow to 1 million, la-di-da. And I definitely still agree with the whole, you got to focus on one thing instead of creating a bunch of products and never doing any marketing right. But what's happening currently in the market is that you're asking a cold audience to make a pretty big financial commitment, that being your first transaction with them. And where that used to work because buyers used to have a lot more trust and less skepticism, right now this is working less and less. And this is not because people don't want what you offer, but it's because the way people decide to buy has really changed. And 2 episodes ago, we already talked about this in the Online Business Reset series. I think it's episode 2. We talked about why launches of higher ticket products, and currently what I'm saying when I mean high ticket in that episode is like 1,000 to 2,000 products. They're underperforming. And one of the reasons why those types of launches are underperforming is because buyers are a lot more trust sensitive and a lot more skeptical than before. And so this episode is the structural answer to that problem, because here's what I see happening in the market. So because buyers are a lot more deliberate now, they research more, they wait longer, they take slower decisions, and they need more touch points before they commit. Basically, that means that a 2K product is not an impulse buy. And so you need to trigger people's impulse buy so they get a first positive interaction with you. It's like your first date, right? A few years ago, you could run a webinar and sell a 2K program to a warm audience and sell it the same day. And it still works, but your conversion rate is just going to be a lot lower because the trust bar is higher. And so people want to try it out before they commit. They want to experience it before they commit. And if you don't give them a way to do that, they won't buy it at all. And so what I've noticed is that a buyer is a completely different person to a follower. And this is one of those things that I have seen my friend, like a very good dear friend who's like my Dutch counterpart, Celine Charlotte. If you speak English, you probably don't know her. But for anyone in Belgium and the Netherlands, she's the queen of online sales. And as I said, good friend, we often call each other. And one of the things I really commend her for is that she has just sold so much. Where I was always doing high ticket, she started out doing low ticket, like literally really, really low ticket. I'm saying like €9, €19. She gradually scaled up the prices of her programs. She's not always done high ticket programs. She has a bunch of products that are lower ticket. And so what's been really cool about that is that she has a lot of repeat buyers, and she doesn't just have followers, she has buyers in her audience. And this is what I like. One of the main things I want you to take away from this episode is someone who has paid you even €27, they've made a decision. They've raised their hand and they've said, hey, I trust this person enough to give them my money. And that will change everything about the way they engage with everything you do. Because when they have paid you €27, they are 10 times more likely to buy your core offer than someone who has followed you for years and who has never spent a cent, because they've already crossed that line and they've already decided for themselves, I am your ideal client, I am a person who trusts you, and I'm a person who buys from you. So let's look then at what's happening in the high ticket market. So AI has made it a lot harder to sell high tickets, not just because there's a lot of AI generated content, but also because honestly, your audience can just open ChatGPT and ask it almost anything: business strategy, roadmaps, content plans, health advice, whatever. It could be wrong, but they could feel like it's right when they ask it. So these are all things that they used to need a coach for, or a course. And so when they are seeing you put up a program, they're not just thinking, can I afford this? But they're also thinking, could I not just figure it out myself with AI? Because they would already think in the past, can I not just do this myself? Can I just not work harder? Can I not just try harder? But now the added layer of AI is there. So this is a new objection. This is an objection that did not exist 5 years ago. And it's very legitimate, especially for pretty surface level information. But what's very interesting here, and what I've seen related to low tickets, which is what this episode is about, is one thing people don't realize yet. When you have super users of AI, I consider myself to be a super user, or I'm trying to be, and I'm trying to train my team as well, is that the reason a lot of people really suck at using AI and self-teaching themselves stuff is because they actually don't know which questions to ask in the first place. And AI will answer what you put in, but it won't tell you unless you ask it for what you're missing, what you're doing wrong. Like, you don't know what you don't know yet. And this is exactly where a low ticket product can earn its place for your ideal customer. Not just by giving information, because AI can give your customers information, but because you're basically showing people the answers and the questions they didn't know they had, because you're revealing the gap between where they are and where they think they are. So when you have a really good low ticket product, you're not just getting them a first win, you're revealing to them that there's stuff they didn't know they need. I don't know how to finish that sentence. That was a difficult sentence. But so the higher the price point, the more trust you need. But trust is something AI can't really generate for you unless you're using AI to multiply really high value content from your brain and your soul. Like I talked about this in the last episode of the Online Business Reset series. Like, I feel like we need some soul and we need some social in social media. So the way I look at low ticket is not necessarily as a discount. I look at low ticket as a door. My business model is not going to change towards being a low ticket business model, but I am going to be using a lot more low ticket to get people through the door. And this is where a lot of people are hesitant, or they misunderstand the strategy, I think, because they think, when they're an expert and they've been selling high ticket, like, oh, I don't want to sell low ticket because I don't want to seem dumb, or like I'm catering to the masses, or devalue my expertise. And so they're like, oh, I don't want to compete on price. I don't want to give away all of my good stuff too cheaply. I've even had discussions with my team where I'm like, I want to sell this at 27. And my team has been like, no, you cannot sell this at 27. This is worth way too much to sell at 27. This is a literal discussion we've had. And in the beginning, I would cave. And I'd be like, okay, you guys are right. So we had this product. It was like $149 or $97, I can't remember, for beginning entrepreneurs who were going to start their business, right? And so we kept selling it at $97 and the conversion was pretty low. And I was like, I really do feel like we need to make it cheaper. And like, no, Amy, it's way too valuable. It's like a multi-hour course. You really can't do that. And then I closed my eyes and I went back in time and I was like, when I was first starting out, I thought 50 euros was a lot of money. And so I told them, like, I know you guys disagree, but we're going to make this cheaper. Because we need to meet people where they're at. And also because the low ticket product has one job. It's to convert the follower into a buyer, not to match the price to the value. Obviously, the other way around, I would never charge too much for something that's worth less. But I think people overcomplicate and they overthink and they always want to turn everything into a 500 euro, 1,000 euro product. And it doesn't have to be that. I think you just need to get people one really good specific win that will then create appetites because they've had a win for the next team. I think I saw Maria Wynn talk about this. She said, I saw this on Instagram. She's like, why is cocaine so good? And you're like, what? But she said, like, because people feel so good when they try cocaine. Obviously, I do not promote drugs. I've never done drugs in my life other than alcohol. But I got her point. It was like, when you make your products feel good, when people have a win from your content, from your podcast, from a low ticket product, obviously they're going to trust you and want more. So yeah, think about that. And then I think last but not least, when we're talking about low ticket, for me personally, why did I never really prioritize it? Because I started out with a really small audience. And so it just made a lot more sense to sell one bigger program. But this was also back in the days where I had a smaller audience and trust was high. Right now, I have a bigger audience. I have the ability to do volume in content. I'm good at sales. I have the products. Like, I basically have everything in place. Why wouldn't I be selling more low tickets? What I don't want you to do, however, is change your entire business model and now think, FastForwardAmy said I need to do low ticket. No, please focus on your core offer. Do low ticket if you have the capacity to introduce it and if the ROI is there, if it makes sense for your business model. So add it as a door, not as a business model itself, unless you know you can do the volume in terms of both content and sales production as well as like audience. Because if you have a small audience, it's going to be really difficult to pay your bills from the low ticket products. But you could use your low ticket products to then sell more of your core offer. Okay, so here's the reframe I want you to look at. Oh, by the way, before we do that, I know you're probably thinking, but what could I make? Because I don't know. So if you have a service, you could make an online product, a smaller thing, fixing one symptom, maybe like giving one quick win to clients. Maybe the thing you always talk about in the first session, or I call this your bridge offer. What is the thing people need to realize or achieve before they become your client? That is a really good low ticket offer. If you struggle coming up with ideas, I personally don't, because I always have about 5 million ideas a day, especially when I have a lot of white space. But I created this thing together with my team member, Amber, because we've been teaching we've coached over 8,000 business owners to start and scale their business. And a lot of them have done this online. And so what we created is this GPT that will ask you a couple of questions. I know, cool, right? We trained it to ask you the questions so you don't have to do it. And it's going to help you come up with a low ticket product and also mid-tier and higher tier if you want to. All you have to do is go to my Instagram to FastForwardAmy and message me idea. So just literally the word idea. And I'll send you the link to the GPT. It will blow your mind. Literally 5 minutes in, you'll be like, holy shit, I thought I did not have any digital product ideas. And now all of a sudden I do. I've even had friends who work at the big 4 consulting companies who've never even thought about starting their own business, who tried it when I was prototyping it. And they were like, holy shit, this is insane. Now I have to start a business. So go and give it a try. I'll link it in the description of this episode as well. It is genius and it's going to help you come up with your first low ticket product. So if you currently don't have anything under, let's say, 100 euros, go and give this a try. The reframe we need to take into account, and I think I needed that as well, is stop thinking about your offer stack as like, oh, if it's cheap, it's less valuable. Think of it more as a trust journey, an entry product, and then your core offer, and then your high ticket. And really look at it as like a staircase. Like each level should create the appetite for the next. So should get them the wins for the next. So your content should also, free content should get people the wins for the paid content. I still believe to this day, people are shitting around and they're like, oh, value-based content is dead. I really don't think value content is dead. I'm going to be making so many whiteboard videos. I'm going to be making so much educational content because I want to be like cocaine. I want people to just feel so good when they're consuming my content that they're like, shit, you're right. I need to do this. So remember though, the low ticket product is not necessarily where you make your money unless that becomes your business model and you have the volume. Remember that. Please don't do this. But it's where you make your buyers. And your buyer list is the most valuable asset you can have in your business. It's more valuable than your follower count that you're building on someone else's land, by the way. It's more valuable than your email list of people who've never spent anything. Your buyer list is just incredible. And also think about what this does for your launch strategy. If you think of episode 2 of this online business reset series, we talked about the beliefs your audience needs before they buy from you in a launch. And you need to make them believe that the problem is real and urgent, that you're the right person to help them solve this, and that the investment makes sense compared to the transformation. So your low ticket product, if you would put that out before your launch, this builds all of those beliefs before you ever open cards on your main offer. Because, someone who's bought your 47 training, they already believe the problem is real. They already know you can solve it because they just digested something that they loved. So they've already decided you're worth spending money on. You're not starting from zero. You're starting from trust. So, go and get some buyers. Okay. Every week in this series, I've been giving out a little bit of an action. So, I already kind of said this, but your one small action this week to reset your online business is look at your current offer stack and look at what is the first paid thing someone can buy from you. If the answer is anything over 150 euros, you have a gap. And that gap is costing you buyers every single week. So think about what you already have that could become a low ticket entry point, maybe a really good chapter or tutorial or problem solver from a bigger training, a recording, a workshop, a framework, a sheet, anything. Basically something that delivers one specific real win at a price point that makes a decision easier. Remember, the goal is not to make money, it's to get buyers in. And you don't need to build something new, you need to package something you already have. But if you do want to build something new or you want to test your idea, go and download my GPT and go and brainstorm with it for 5 minutes. It's going to blow your mind. As I said, link in the description or message me idea on Instagram. This week, I'm at a business retreat in LA. I hope to get a lot of insights so that in the next couple of episodes, I can blow your mind with a lot of new insights about how the world is changing. And this is just your reminder to not be afraid to change and evolve. This is a little bit of a bonus insight, but I think, especially in the online business industry, we are so desperate to turn everything passive. We're so desperate to scale. We're so desperate to look like the online business gurus who pretend they never work, that we think that our business needs to be static and needs to be fixed and needs to be done. And we forget that if we would own a shop, we would also put up a promo for the thing that we're selling that week, or we'd go and open the doors and turn on the lights. And social media, your sales, your products, it's supposed to be dynamic. It's a business. Unless you're building a really different type of business than what I'm building, it's always going to be a living, breathing thing. That doesn't mean you can't automate or delegate. I mean, I love delegating so much, but just don't forget to bring the soul and never be ashamed to work hard to achieve your dreams. I think this is a hill I will die on, is too many people feel like there's shame in working hard towards a goal. But like when you're training for a marathon, it makes sense that you need to train, right? When you're building a business, when you're doing something that not many have done before you, of course you're going to have to work hard. And I don't want anyone to hustle until they burn out, but I also don't want anyone to feel ashamed about having to put in the work. So go put in the work, go and download that GPT, message me if you have questions, and I'll see you next week for the last episode of the Online Business Reset series. Okay, let me know if you liked it, and talk next week.